My book is written for the women out there who know they have more to give in life, but for whatever reason feel like they can't. Hello, my name is Sophie Cachia and I'm an author. Then There Was You is a book published by Simon and Schuster, and it is a collection of 14 stories whereby I interviewed 14 women, beautiful stories of reinvention and rediscovery of themselves. Then There Was Her was my first book published. It was also published by Simon and Schuster, and that book was more about myself. It was a memoir following my life up until this point, with a focus on my own self-discovery and reinvention period, from being a straight married woman, a mother, until falling in love with a woman, where my life took a very different turn. Then There Was Her sparked a lot of interest, a lot of women to reach out to me personally via email, through my publisher, on social media. And I very quickly became aware that there was a relatability there. And it might not have been so much so the sexuality piece to that story, but just the idea of a woman wanting more in life and perhaps feeling trapped in situations, whether that was relationships, careers, family dynamics. And so I actually had quite a lot of women reaching out to me with their very own stories. And within my journey, I learnt the power of storytelling. I saw the effect that Then There Was Her had on the broader public. And I knew that the power the power that I could create with putting together other women's stories and how inspirational that could be. So Then There Was You was born. So going into it, well, at the time I thought I had a selection process. I thought I knew what I was after, but that very quickly turned. And I was having face to face interviews with these women. I say interview, I don't like using that word. They were very relaxed, casual conversations. Some of them went for an hour, some went for many hours. And I very much went on an emotional connection. And like I said, this book isn't a book where I'm hoping everyone can relate to a certain chapter, because that's just not going to be possible. But each of these women sparked an emotion in me and a relatability and a sense of understanding that I wanted to share with others. So I did sit down face to face interviews with them, where I took away those interviews and I wrote their first story. And obviously, because they were not my stories, I worked really closely with those women to go back and forth. They were able to read, first versions, edits, right up until the final stage, because I wanted to get their story correct and I wanted it to be the best representation of them as possible. So I have worked really closely with these women over the past 12 months, and I hope they're really happy with how the stories came out. So there are obviously a few sexuality pieces in there. Some women who were in similar situations to mine, they were married or in relationships, or they were mothers, where they may have met somebody else, may have met a woman, they may have wanted to explore things later on. There are certain situations where women were in domestic violence, family dynamics with them and their children, where they've had to flee from that. There's also a bit of a focus too on not so much the physical violence in a relationship, but a lot of these women suffered severe emotional and mental abuse. So highlighting that abuse is not just one form. Unfortunately, we face suicide in this book as well. We face self-harming. We face a lot of mental health issues. But there's also career aspects as well, where women have left situations that they worked so hard to get to in their career, only to realize that was just not the correct environment for them. So I tried to get a variety of stories. And again, like I say, I just hope there's an emotion that everyone can relate to. My book is written for the women out there who know they have more to give in life, but for whatever reason feel like they can't. And my book is written for the women who want to write their own story. They want to finish their own story, and who perhaps feel like at some point the pen to their story has been taken off them, or they've given the pen to someone else to write, and they're taking ownership and they want that pen back and they want to finish their own story how they want it to be written. Something that we had to take into deep consideration, myself and the publisher, when putting together this story, was a lot of these women were not in safe environments, and that was obviously our first priority. So we do have some women who are happy to have their name attached to their story, but we also equally have as many who wanted to remain anonymous and who have been given And we've had to change specific details to protect their safety as well, which absolutely was our priority. Um, in On the other hand, I probably didn't anticipate how difficult emotionally this book would be for me to write, and that's due to a few factors. One, you can at time think that your life is really challenging, and I think it always is, and our difficult moments in life are always relative to what we're going through. But I had to sit and listen to some horrific circumstances that these women were in, and from woman to woman or human to human, and the empath in me, it was really hard at times to sit there. And also from an author perspective, I really struggled at times thinking I'm not worthy enough for you to share this story with me. Like I just wanted to write a book, and here you are opening up to me about some super vulnerable personal moments, and moments I felt very blessed and lucky to have been given that opportunity. But something I'm still finding now while doing my book tour is, why did they choose me? I don't feel qualified or worthy enough to have the responsibility of telling these stories. So I think that's bringing out the human side in me. But during the process, certainly upon first conversations, and the more I got to know them, and even then recording my audiobook and retelling these stories, it was very challenging, and something I probably hadn't prepared myself enough for. That I look at them like my children. I love every single story, and it was really hard to choose those 14 because I did engage with quite a lot of women on this project. One that probably stood out the most to me is Noelle. Noelle's happy to give her name in the story, and Noelle was someone I really had to give courage to commit to doing this. She really wanted to do this, but she held a lot of fear with doing it as well. And whilst I obviously didn't force her or push her, I knew inside she wanted to do it, and she just needed that boost of confidence. I think being a mother myself, Noelle is a transgender woman, um, and she identifies as a woman but was biologically born a male. And I feel like I've always been very open minded to the trans community, and I've been very as understanding as I possibly can be. I thought I've understood a lot, but until I actually spoke to Noelle about some of the thoughts she had as a child, it really got inside of my soul as a mother. And picturing my son and my daughter at 6 years old, 9 years old, how confused they would be having those thoughts and being told, no, you can't do this, or yes, you can do this, or you can't like that color because you're a boy. And it really just sort of um, hit a chord inside with me, struck a chord, because I was able to not relate to Noelle's story herself, but to the confusion that my children would feel. And I've learnt so much more. I thought I knew a lot, and Noelle's taught me so much more empathy and so much more love surrounding the trans community. There was a line where Maddie said, "I'm too young to feel this sad." And that was something that instantly I connected with, because I've lived that same feeling. I was married and I was so confused within that marriage, but within myself. And I remember being 26, 27, 28 years of age, where you're a baby still, and you're supposed to be thriving. And I had young children and a beautiful husband, but yet I felt so sad. And I remember saying things like that to myself. I shouldn't feel like this. I have so much life to live. And you face those moments of, no, I need to stay because it's the right thing to do, but I feel so sad. And so that line of, I'm too young to feel this sad, I know for a fact will be one that many others out there can connect to. And as an author who was writing that story, to be able to deeply connect with that line made, I suppose, that story a lot more enjoyable to write. No, I'm not just an author. I have two books now. Then There Was Her, Then There Was You. But I also run two companies. I own an Australian sleepwear and loungewear label called Cachia, which is my surname. And within the past 2 years, I've also launched an Australian startup makeup company as well. So I run that with a very small group of people now. Keisha's 6 years old and is doing really well. And I'm starting at the bottom again with a startup. So I'm also a mother of two children, a single mother of two children, a 9-year-old boy, Bobby, and a 6-year-old, Florence. And they are just my every living reason to breathe on this earth. I recently finished Verity by Colleen Hoover, and I have never read a book whereby I felt like I was watching a movie where you're scared for that next scene or you just cannot wait to flick that page and you sit there with such anticipation. I've never read a book that made me feel like that so much. So I do have It Ends With Us and It Starts With Us sitting on my bedside table, but until, I have a little bit more room to breathe, because I love reading a book, but really committing to it. I don't want to read a book and then put it down for a month. I want to go to bed every night and read the book. So I'm absolutely ready to start those when I've finished with this. What is next for me? I've never been shy in saying I would love more children in the future. But again, as a woman, as a single woman now, I don't know what that looks like. But that is absolutely something that, whether I consider doing that on my own or waiting till, the right time if someone else comes along. But I'm very focused on family at the moment. And like my first book, Then There Was Her, showed, I spent a lot of time running from the things that now give me so much peace. And that's my home, that's the comfort of my four walls, and that's my children. So just being the best mum I can be right now amongst all the busyness, and just really enjoying the simplicity that I now have in my life. Thank you. Thanks so much.